It is Drake with Everything Culture.
And Sharon from She Gets a Pod.
And we're back with our series on things they don't want to talk about. Is that right?
The talks they don't want to have.
There it is right there.
Yay.
And we're going to get right into it. We're going to be discussing this morning, this afternoon, this evening about growing up Black. So wherever this conversation may go, get ready, and it's going to be a progressive conversation. Because you know why? It's us. We're here together. So everybody sit around, listen, watch, and let's share some intimate stories and experiences that Shan and myself has had in our childhood and our different, spectrum of being Black in America. So Shan, I got to ask you, when did you first realize you were Black?
Ooh. I will say I was in the second grade in Philly, and we had a field trip. We had a field trip to go to the Y for that month. And that was the first time I've ever been to a pool. And we were learning how to swim. And
I like this.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, maybe. I'm gonna keep waiting. Continue.
I was like, okay, I need a swimsuit, Mom. And my mom was Jamaican. She was like, okay, and you need a swim cap. Why do I need a swim cap? Let me just go in the pool. Everybody else, the boys don't wear a swim cap. You need a swim cap for your hair so your hair doesn't get wet. And my hair was always my mom's second daughter. It was like I'm her first daughter. My hair was my mom's second daughter. It's a thing of Black people, Black women taking real pride in their daughter's hair and long hair. Long hair to a lot of Black households is like healthy wealth.
We're gonna be talking about it more.
Good background, all of that. And so she was really into like, make sure you put on your swim cap, make sure it's tight, make sure and I remember swimming, and the instructor, I think the instructor was white or biracial, and being surprised at how well I caught on compared to other students. And I feel like what was said to me was very like cusp racism, but it wasn't like mean. It was like,
was it a microaggression?
Okay, it was like basically you swim good for a Black kid. You know what I'm saying?
Was that said verbatim, or that was?
It probably wasn't verbatim, but I remember feeling like singled out, like what I did well was special because of my skin. I remember feeling like that. And because my mom and my dad didn't discuss race in the house, it wasn't seen or held like a big deal. Like, I'm going to call such and such tomorrow because of X, Y, and Z. It was just like, oh, okay. But growing up later on, when I was like 11 or 12, the way I would hear my dad, who was Jamaican, born and raised in Jamaica, but lived in Philadelphia, talk about seeing Black young teenagers on the street with their pants hanging off their pants, you would think he was a white man in the South, the way he talked about Black bodies in the streets of Philadelphia. But because my dad was also born in 1923, the life that he has lived and seeing how Black people are treated that dress and carry themselves a certain way compared to the young people of that time, he may think like, this is improper, this is proper, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. It is okay for me to
those European standards,
yes,
those white American standards.
Yes, because he saw it as being better, and that's what you should be. And if you're anything less, you're nothing. or it's okay for me to talk to you or treat you like this. And so that's the first time I felt Black as a child, was at the YMCA. And then growing up, seeing the differences in how certain Black people looking a certain way, dressing a certain way, would treat each other depending on what they interpreted from how they look.
Ooh,
What was
okay.
yours?
So you was about me to go in. How did your father treat white people? Was white is right? Was that the
What's so
idea that
crazy
you
is
may have had?
I never see my dad
Engage with white people?
engage with white people. You know, he
Mm,
owned a business. The people who he rented his properties to were not white. The people that came in his barbershop were not white. The people he played lottery with were not white. So I don't know.
that's that we're gonna have to touch on. We're gonna have to put a pin in that
Mm-hmm.
treatment of Black people, American Black people, even though Jamaican Black people or people that how they treated American descendant of slavery. Even though they
Yeah.
are Caribbean or still part of the translated
Yeah.
slave trade, it's just how we treat one another.
Right.
But my experience, oh my god, when I first realized that I was Black or I was different, um, was from my grandfather before I went off to think the first grade. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten, but I definitely the first grade. Um,
Your grandfather on your mom's side or your dad's side?
my mother's side. So when I was like 4 years old, I just remember the ride. I remember we going into the live with my grandparents. I thought it was like a trip, and basically my parents getting divorced and it was whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always raised by my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, and my uncle. He stayed, here and there. We had like a nice piece of property in East Texas. I would say that. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather, he moved dirt, contractor, so hardworking. Grandmother in the church, missionary, did scarves,
Mm-hmm.
handkerchiefs, and she was a nurse. So, but for me, oh man, yeah, I was young, and I remember them sitting me down. My grandfather sitting me down and giving me the talk, like, "Hey, you can't bring in your white friends over here," and he
Blatantly
was
like
like
that.
blatantly, straight up, and I was like, "Me, young." He was like, "Because it's not you can't be friends with them, you can't do that. It's just we don't need that type of dangers in our household."
Mm.
Like we come once again. I'm from Tyler, Texas. Tyler, Texas is probably like damn near a sundown town. Okay,
Okay.
like,
I get that.
so racism was always discussed in our household. We was very pro-Black,
Mm.
Muhammad Ali, James Brown, like all these different folks that was like fight the power. Like it would support you Black and you're proud.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My grandfather and my grandmother both were born in 1918. So,
Mm.
and they saw a lot of stuff. So me, like when I went to my Head Start, that was predominantly Black. It was all Black kids there. First grade, kindergarten, it was, a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
First grade, I went to a predominantly Black, but for whatever reason, my grandfather made sure to have that conversation with me. It was like, hey, I guess he can tell I'm friendly. And once again, I wasn't even thinking about girls. He like, you can't bring no Black white girls in this household. And he wasn't trying to be racist. I know at that time, I didn't know any better, but he's like, they would kill you, little Black boy. You can't do, and I'm gonna say you can't even do what your friends are doing out there. If they outside, if they throw a ball and if a ball land in another person's yard, and especially you don't know that person, don't go in that yard. They will kill you. So it wasn't
I
the
got that from anybody.
man. No, I got that very early on. So when I see the stuff still happening to this day, like with Tamir Rice or um, Trayvon Martin, it doesn't come to a surprise to me because my grandfather said it would happen. And those preventative conversations, it's like, are they still needed? I absolutely say yes.
Me too.
Until we start seeing a significant change. But he also taught me to fight too. If they
Mm.
call you the N word or something like that, or you come and tell us, or you lay them hands down, But it was it's sad because you want to live in the world. Like, I know I would love to live in the world. Everything's great. Everybody's getting along. And yeah, high fives, rainbows, and Sundays, and all that good stuff. But I appreciate him taking the time because he loved me and to communicate that to me, rather than me just going out in the world and experiencing and happening, and I'm coming back like, what's going on? It was kind of like, and it wasn't like I told you. It's like, come here, we got you. You know,
What's
no
so
expectation to
crazy
happen.
for me, now I understand why my dad was like, no, or you ain't got no friends, I'm your only friend. And my mom would be so like trusting and gullible with people, and chances upon chances upon chances. And my dad was like, she asked, can Chantal go to the end of the street and go study with the girl in her class? What girl? The girl from her class. No. It's her friend from school. She ain't got no friends. I'm her friend. I understand why, as a parent, he would say something like that, because now, fast forward, Anya, she's 9. I'm working at the desk on Friday. Well, what's her name? Toya will come in 2 weeks to play with me after school. I said, who's Toya? A girl from my class. Ain't nobody coming over here. I didn't invite anybody. She's not coming over here. She'll be in the yard. No, why? Well, what age can I sleep over somebody's house? I said, Anya, I don't have an age to give you that you can sleep over someone's house. I said, there are things that happen when you go to people's houses when you don't really know them that will shape you for the rest of your life. I can't tell you when. And so, like, discussions like that, I understand where my dad was coming from.
Yeah.
But the difference between my dad and me, there was no discussion about his why. I give my kids a discussion about my why.
And that's why I value my grandfather talking to me. It was, don't get me wrong, he didn't say too much. He was like, hey, he was very conscious. He had like a third, maybe 6th grade education. So he was very short
too,
on his words, But it was like, okay, I love my grandfather. He was my best friend. And later on, like first time I had my experience, I went to a predominantly white school in it may have been 2nd grade, or second grade. My mother prepped me and I talked, and the teachers were the first ones that like, you're a little black boy. It was like the principals, you're a little black boy. I started hearing it all over when I started going to predominantly white schools. When I went to the predominantly black elementaries, they were just pro-black and historically,
Yeah.
You hear a little, nothing, but you feel the difference. Like, why did this kid get treated better and to get more attention? Why did we both do the same thing and I get longer time out than they get time out? Like, why do they get to eat this type of food and you're listening to them and I hear you're more gentle to them, but you're more harsh on me and the people who look like me. Like Keisha, like, Becky spit on Keisha. Keisha tried to come and tell you, Keisha pushed it. Why nothing happened to Becky? Because Becky initiated it and we all saw it. Like those microaggressions that I saw that my grandparents, like, and my mother too, would tell me about, like, why didn't, what was learned in those other households, I started to think, and older I became, I became close with like some of my Caucasian faculty, and they had kids and I become friends with them. And I remember I was real close to my 6th grade, 7th grade nurse, like very close to. My mother would take her, we'll go over to their house and all that. My mother
She's black.
No, she was white. Oh, I wonder how her son do. Her son had that before Eminem came out. He had a Marshall Mathers attitude. He was like the type to pay pew pew school type behavior. I remember him. He was always angry about something. He was a little like a year younger or so. But I would consider it a good kid. I was like the teacher's pet, straight A student, little fat kid that just want to make people smile and, didn't mind adults. But at the same time, like I realized, it was like on the school bus, I rode a predominantly black school bus, and like I saw kids get left, and I even saw how the black people would treat the white students. They were very much more patient and kind to
I
them.
didn't see that.
And that's why I know when you and I and Baylor talking to Baylor, shout out to BTG for President Ronald.
Mm.
He said some things that I'm like, man, he said I never experienced. I don't know how they do. And like me coming from, once again, we talking about the spectrum now. The way I was raised and come from, I'm like, yeah, you gotta respect it to check it. Like that's what the reason I don't live in my hometown. I realized now it was not when I got to high school, I saw a lot of the black teachers didn't play that from the white kids, but would be more, hey, little young black boy. And I think the other teachers was trying to prepare us for the harshness and was like, you can't do that because like my grandparent, like, because you have some that is harder on us because they know if they're not hard on us and check it quickly, if it gets up, they're going to try to expel us. They're going to try to suspend for long periods of time, whatever the
Correct.
case may be. Juvenile detention. I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of like just growing up black and total. Like once again, I went to different schools. I saw the difference in education. Like the teachers, for the most part, my black schools cared more about me. I would say that they cared more about
Crazy.
uplifting.
Okay, right here.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to elementary school in Philadelphia, we went to Heritage Elementary, and they had a program called the African Village. And the African Village program consisted of second grade, third grade, and fourth grade. And the way that the school was set up, the classes had no walls. So you can see through the second grade room, the third grade room, and then the fourth grade room. And we would all have lunch together in a room. It would be mixed ages, and then we would all have like, if it was like a class project, everybody would see second grade's class project. Everybody would see fourth grade's project. Everybody would see third grade's project. If it came to discipline, you were disciplined separate from the other school rooms and classrooms for that program. You could be hit with a ruler from that teacher. The whole school wasn't treated like that, only in that program. And I was in it for second grade, third grade, not fourth grade because we ended up moving before then. But the teachers themselves were African, and they taught us about Kwanzaa, and they taught us about what it stood for. And our projects were on Black inventors. Our teachings were numbers, but also finding a way to incorporate a teaching from the African culture in it. The foods that we would bring in when we would have foods was of that. Making food in class was a thing. But the way that they discipline as a child masked the why on why they're doing it a certain way for me. So I didn't feel like those teachers cared as a child. I felt like they were just strict and stern and not warm, feeling like a teacher that just wants to have fun with you and stuff. But now as an adult, I see it was about structure.
Yeah.
So when you move up in the grade, you know how to have that self-discipline and how to carry yourself. And that school was predominantly Black, right?
Yeah.
And then when we moved to Baltimore and Maryland, it became more Hispanic and Black. Then when we moved to Florida after that, it became white, a sprinkle of Black, but Southern Black, which I didn't understand because there was a difference, and Hispanic. And Florida is when I felt the racial difference of how a teacher changed their tone when they talk to you versus
Mm-hmm.
when they talk to a white student or a student because they know their parent. And that's when I became the anomaly of a black girl in that school in middle school because I never seen a black girl with long hair that's hers, and they'll touch it and they'll pull it. Now, I've never been the child that was like, oh, don't touch my hair. My mom never had a conversation with me about, if people like your hair, they can give you a compliment, but don't let them touch it. That was never a conversation. So when people want,
As being a Southern black, oh, that was definitely a conversation in the house.
listen,
You don't touch nothing on me,
right, but
nothing.
me coming from up north and having Jamaican parents, that was never a conversation. So if they wanted to touch my hair, I let them touch it. You know, if they wanted to know, you know, what are you eating, I would have the discussion with them, not knowing you don't let somebody come stand in front of you and question you about what you're eating. You know, there's boundaries. That was never a thing.
When did you first watch The Color Purple?
I had to be in high school.
I watched The Color Purple when I was like 6, 7, and I watched it. We watched about every other month. It was steady in the VHS.
Yeah.
And those scenes and what happened in The Color Purple, my family, y'all know it's my favorite movie. It's instilled in me. Okay.
Yeah.
And I see it in real life, not only with me, but with other people. And the reason why you don't touch me, like with Miss Sophia,
Yeah.
is that sign of ownership, like we're a pet.
Yeah.
Don't, it is such a privileged white perspective, you know, to feel like I don't want to touch nobody unless it's my lady. Okay. No, the thing is, but the come up to another human being and like, oh, let me pet you. That's how we would treat it.
Yeah.
And it's instilled in me, like, once again, and if you don't check it immediately, they'll do it again. That's the thing. And it's not only with that, but when we're talking about school, it was also outside of school. It was the whole dynamic. I started, the older I became, like, almost like I went through all these schools. I went to the dynamics when I was transitioning from middle school to high school. I was telling them when I was doing my transcript, I was on top of my stuff. Like I was, once again, 8th grade, they were like, oh, like we had, once again, segregated time. We had the white high school, we had the black high school, okay? John Tyler, Robert E. Lee, okay? John Tyler black,
Robert that E. name, white. Robert E. Lee.
John Tyler ain't no better. That's the thing. They both Confederate generals at the time, but you don't know better until you really sat down and do the history.
I went to Lyndon B. Johnson Middle School.
Like Lyndon B. Johnson. Okay. See, but so the game. But my mother went to Robert E. Lee. My aunts and things, they went to Edwin J. Scott, which was predominantly black, but it was when segregation ended. They made John Tyler was a predominantly black school, and they made Robert E. Lee stupid. It was stupid racist. They made Robert E. Lee so they wouldn't have to segregate. Like you wouldn't have to segregate Robert E. Lee too. Stupid. But the thing is, when that happened, you know, it was Robert E. Lee rebels. They used to come out in pep rallies with the Confederate flag, knowing they playing the black school for our games. It was a lot of race wars happening. So when I was telling I remember being 8th grade, them teachers loved me. I went to a school called Hubbard. And when I was transitioned from Hubbard to
such a island name for a man.
Man, but when I tell you the counselors and my student, the one that did my transcripts and all that, Drake, you're not going to John Tyler. You're coming to Lee. You're not going to leave us like that and sign me up for Lee State after I told them I'm going to John Tyler, the black school. And when I tell you,
was that because they felt like you were better than?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And when I went to John Tyler, and I'm still the same person, I'm still straight A student, still smart ahead. And we would have math. I was big into algebra, math, geometry. Oh, that was my kid. Come on, numbers, nerd. And when we used to be in competitions, and I used to see some of my friends, not only white friends, some of my Indian friends too. they would not talk to me. They look legit like snarled at me. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And then I have to embarrass y'all like I used to do back. Like we were cool. But I'm seeing how that the schools, but it's really the segregation and racism I'm looking in it too, because that's on the other end. But I started realizing when I was in high school, once again, I went to Hubbard, I went to a predominantly white school, very preppy bougie. I remember they used to have full fight wars. Drugs are being sold in the 8th grade. All this stuff happening. And the same thing was happening at Robert E. Lee. But I started realizing if something happened at my high school, the black high school, y'all put it on the front page.
Right.
It was so in depth in the media. It was propaganda, and I'm seeing it, but I'm like, y'all not but they have drug ring found or students ran over each other at Lee, but that's on page 8, section 3 in the corner of this.
I mean, that's as a parent, that's how I feel about private schools. Is this push of private schools even, but private schools, you get kids that are more involved in adult things and exposure to your kids than in an elementary school.
And who usually have access to that?
Wealthier white kids.
Okay, and if we talk about that full understanding of supporting each other, and it's like leaving I didn't go to a private school, but I would love to talk to more people that went to a private school and what was their experience there. I know some people went to private schools that went to public schools, transitioned to that. So it's always a different feeling for that and what you learn and what you have for being Black coming up. But I realized when I go to the grocery store, being walked around the grocery store has been, what you call it? What's the word I'm looking for?
What?
When they being racially profiled as a child.
I never experienced that.
Yes, you have.
I mean,
I don't know. Well,
going to the store, no.
But that's my thing, because once again, maybe when you grew up, it was different. But growing up in East Texas, these white folks were watching you the whole time when you walked in. And now, I don't know, this just clicked to me. Don't touch nothing. Don't look at. Does that come from so you won't be accused of doing? Do white folks hear that same thing or other ethnicities?
No, but I find myself doing that with Anya, not because I feel like she is, just because I want to educate her on the fact that you not doing nothing but having your hands a certain way near your bag because it's already this predisposition of you doing something. Don't do it. Like when today we went to the store, she had her toy in her hand and her bag was open and she playing with it. I said, Anya, put that in your bag and close it. So, went to Barnes and Noble, put that in your bag and close it.
But do you understand that is problematic and it affects us?
Yes.
Like for instance, hiding from the police. I had to fear for the police because I grew up as a little boy hearing about Rodney King. I remember they used to talk about it all the time.
I didn't learn about that until I was in my 20s.
It was like I used to watch the news with my grandparents and parents.
You know what's so crazy? I asked my mom the other day. I said, "Mom, do you remember living in Philly when they bombed that whole street in Philly with all those Black people?" And such and she's like, I don't know. I probably heard something about it. Like there's so many things nonchalantly that I'll bring up in history that have happened in Philadelphia or in Maryland, and my mom was like, I don't know.
But you kind of said it earlier because you mentioned that your father really was in support of Black Americans unless they appeared to have a white gaze, to a sense, or support the certain type of behavior. He
also had this predisposition that Black Americans were lazy.
Yeah. So, and where did he get it from?
From probably the white.
Same thing. If people have, once again, that's why we do everything culture. I've had people come into spaces and have these predisposition or prejudice views of us and never sat down and talked to none of us. Where are you getting it from, dude? Propaganda? Like it's been like since I remember the world, what's it called? what was the war that the Americans lost? But when they lost Vietnam, the Viet Cong, whatever they want to say, but they put out this information about us and saying what we are and what we're not. Instead, that's why we have to get to know each other so we can love one another. I
Yeah.
can't continue. I can't judge Jamaican people what a white person have said. Why don't I go talk to one of myself?
Mm-hmm.
So, and with your mother, you expressed that she has a passive mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It may not. Once again, shout out one of my favorite movies, but one of my favorite lines: Doughboy, Ice Cube, Boys in the Hood. Either they don't know, don't show, or don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's very impactful with that. You know, my once again, that goes back to education. You know, you gotta start educating and being aware and being active in your community and active in your society. Because if something happened to a black person, I don't care if it was across the world.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents is like, you need to pay attention to it. You need to. It was like before Issa Rae said, "I'm rooting for everybody black." Those my grandparents.
See, I never experienced that. There was no conversation of blackness in my house. There was no conversation of um today is, the day Jamaica got its independence. There was no this is tradition, let's do X, Y, and Z. It was just like go outside, um, do your work, come home. The world is this house. The world is when I go with you and drop you off at church and we come back and we have Sunday dinner and then we do the same thing Monday through Friday. Um, your bedtime is 7 o'clock. It was very like there is nothing else going on. It's a figment of your imagination. Just do what we tell you. And then when I got exposed to that shift of you think your parents know everything, they're geniuses, they're so smart. Every time you ask them a question, they have an answer. And then I started seeing the fact that I had questions, but my mom didn't have any more answers. And that was a point of me having to educate myself and also teach my mom what I learned because she did not know. Um, and after, I want to say after fifth grade, that became a thing. Well, that's how you did it in Jamaica. Well, this is how my teachers tell me to do it. She was like, well, we didn't have to do no math with letters in it. So you need to ask your brothers because I can't help you.
Mm-hmm.
And from there it was like, Chantal, you go to school, you do your work, you want to know how to do it, make sure you actually teach it before you come home. If you don't know it, I'll get you a tutor and I'll pay them to teach you, but I can't help you. What my mom did excel in was English. My mom skipped a lot of her grades. In Jamaica, she tested out. In Jamaica, they don't hold kids back by their age. It's more about your knowledge. You have the knowledge of it, they move you up. So English wise, in the bag. History wise, in the bag. Writing, grammar, in the bag. Math, my mom was like, can't help you. So a lot of how I grew up, I became the person over Chantal very early, which backfires in a lot of ways because I feel like I got to figure out how to do it myself all the time when in reality I don't. But growing up as a child in America, having two Caribbean parents, and more times than not, having my mom be my go to for elementary school, middle school, high school, college, my friends, the people I met, the people I work with, and learning, you know, they talk to you this way because of this. They're gonna treat you this way because of that. By default, as a mom, I teach my kids both ways. I teach them what my experience was. I teach them why I do things this way, and I teach them how to properly talk to people. And if this ever happens to you, this is what you do.
I'm just not thinking about something.
What?
Like, coming where I come from, I have close friends who are white, but my close friends who are white came either during college or after college.
Not high
Okay.
school.
Not high school, middle
I have
school,
white
or
friends in high
elementary.
school.
Like that you're still friends with today?
Yeah, it's on
I
my
take that
Instagram
back.
right now.
I take that back. I take that back. Some people that we were not as close as we were when we were young, but we're
Mhm.
cool now. But they, and the reason I say this because some that I was cool and I would like to be friends with them, but they have very bigoted and ignorant mindsets, and I cannot entertain that. And it's not only with the white ones, but it was some of the black ones too. You know,
I experienced that in Florida, and I
yeah,
have friends who have that whole Confederate T-shirt,
yeah.
Confederate flag on my
See,
truck.
and the
But
thing you say Florida, but you was in Florida for a short period of
I was
time.
in Florida for 5 years.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was in Texas for 30, what, 32, 33 years, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So think
Mm-hmm.
like that's the thing you gotta think about. Your experience in college, I would say, being one of the wildest states in the US, Florida number one, Texas right number
Yes.
two. I don't care what people say. I'm from Texas. I'm a Texas born and raised, you know, and that's the thing being born black in Texas. We're taught, once again, being taught, remember the Alamo, you know, support all these things. Not until like 3 years ago, I realized the Alamo was fought by Mexico to free the slaves. What?
The way we have to unlearn the shit we were taught as kids.
No,
I
don't
apologize.
unlearn it. Remember it and
Well,
shift it.
not,
You know what
not
I mean?
like
I know
not
what you mean. I know what you
yeah,
mean.
not forget it, but just really find out the
Ooh,
truth. Like
ooh.
it's like, man.
And we're gonna talk more about education in this series, but it's a lot that is growing up. It's like you growing up with a bunch of lies being told to us. Growing up being told like for instance, we have two different perspectives, and I'm glad you're sharing with us. But for the people who grew up in like that, what are some things that you were told as a child that had to deal with race? You know, had to deal with. Did you ever have? You know, I hear about the talk, and I hear people did not hear the talk, and I'm like, no, nah, that talk has to. I was saying having a conversation with my friends recently. When you're giving your kid, you know, your nephews and nieces that talk to that, she's like, because their parents are not giving it to them. And I
About
could talk
what?
about even the disappointments I saw in my own community too, where I had teachers or I had a speech impediment. I can't say anything about it. When I had a speech impediment and I used to stutter and I couldn't pronounce my R's correctly. I was
Oh, that's so cute.
wait. That's how I was talking, okay? But when I went to my black school, this is the truth. We've been honest and transparent here, right?
Mhm.
Um, man, that facilitator, that educator, or that person, that specialist would bring me and like another boy into this room, and she'll pick up a magazine and put Legos in front of us and allow us to play and chill that whole time.
Whereas I had that same thing where I would go to speech from third grade all the way up to seventh grade in middle school because my mom would send me to Jamaica to visit so much that the way that my family spoke, I would write that
Mm.
way. Or some words I would mix up with the English language. And my teachers were like, no, she's not getting it, it's not clicking. And it was basically an unlearning every day until seventh grade of that is separate from this. You don't write like that, even though your family says it like this. And it was books. We were actually doing the work. We weren't sitting there and playing. But I have seen people who are supposed to be helping Black kids with what their skills to build it up that just make them frolic as if like it's okay, whatever.
But my
They'll grow out of
experience.
it.
So this was like from kindergarten and first grade. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is first and second grade. Transition to the predominantly white school. This white woman specialist pulled. I said, "Oh, time for speech." I'm like, okay. My mother put me in. I'm thinking where the Legos at, you know, where the
Yeah.
Legos and shit, you know. So I'm sorry, where the Legos and stuff. And she was like, "No, we're gonna work on, you know, rolling my tongue." And I'm like, "You man, like she
Yeah.
really said that." And I'm like, I got the help I needed from a white woman, a white facility, a different type of education program, So I'm not gonna say everything was bad experiences, but it was discrimination and microaggression. But can we have one without the other? That's my thing.
It's possible.
It absolutely is possible, and that's what we're going to continue to strive for, is for us to have those effective, once again, conversations. So what we're doing right here, sharing ourselves and sharing the history of being Black in America, it's going to be helpful for others to see that. So if you're doing good work, understand, and once again, we grew up in two different ways, and understand, and also have that understanding. Like when I had my peers and friends, and it's not to dismiss everyone because we have grace for one another, but once again, the pillars: respect, communication, consistency. We can have that. We can have a lot more growth, a lot of, I would say, positive pivoting. So when we could do what we're doing right here, we're going to see a lot more.
And I will say this: if your parents were from a different country and they were raising you in America and you were born in America and they were older, that's like a double whammy of a halt of what you were taught in your household versus the world that you live in, because a lot of Caribbean older parents do not want to unlearn, do not want to learn anything new.
It's a lot of Southern racist white folks that don't want to learn either.
Yeah,
that's what we have in critical race theory. Removing the truth, but they don't want what we're doing right here.
Yeah, they don't want to have these talks, and that's why I did the series, because when you have talks like this, or when you overhear talks like this, you begin to understand your neighbor. You know what I'm saying?
If you care about them.
Yeah. But it's another one, y'all. It's another one in the bag, to gain understanding and understand where we come from, and what we're exposed to, and finding understanding. You can be different, but you can also understand where someone else is coming from. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, don't forget to drop them in the comments. Please leave a review. Please review under She Gets a Pod, under Everything Culture. Please check out his podcast on his own podcast platform. We are on TikTok and we are on IG, Twitter. Wherever you see us, let us know that you're listening to the show.
Yes, please.
All right.
And as always, we got to remember the mission statement for Everything Culture while we do this collab.
Let's go.
Is that from the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is he believed that men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because of segregation. And because of segregation, we have miscommunication. So our goal is to have more conversation so we get to know each other based on the pillars of respect, communication, and consistency. So let's do that. Let's get to know one another. Thank you again, Shan. It's always a pleasure. Pod fam in the business. So I want to say love y'all again, and peace.
Peace.